Okay, guys, so I'm recording different videos in different classes explaining different questions on this worksheet, right? So on this video, we're going to be explaining a handful of questions, and there's two sides to this worksheet. Let's begin by understanding that the front side of this worksheet is dealing with parallel lines. Now, the instructions say write an equation in slope-intercept form, so we all know that we need to write it in y equals mx plus b form of the line that passes through the given point. So they give you a point and is parallel to the graph of the given equation. So they're indirectly giving you the slope because parallel means same slope. So everybody should write down parallel. That means same slope, same m value, okay? So they give you a point and they give you a slope indirectly because they tell you that it's parallel. See, here's a point, and here is the slope of this equation. And all you need to do is take that slope, and that's going to be your slope. Why? Because it's parallel to this given equation. So I'm going to go with number 8 on this video. There's other questions explained on other videos. I'm going to do 8 and 11 on this video. So once again, they tell you write a slope-intercept form equation. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. That's the equation that you want. So obviously, to be able to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need two things. You need an m and you need a b, okay? So the question is, do we have an m value? Well, they don't tell us, hey, your m is this, your m is 5, or your m is 1/2, but they do give you an equation that is parallel to our equation, all right? Our line is going to be parallel to this line. Now, if only I could find the slope of this line, but the problem is this equation is in standard form, ax plus by equals c. And when I just said that ax plus by equals c, there is no m, right? Standard form doesn't have an m. So you need to change this from standard form to slope-intercept form just to be able to see the m value of this equation, okay? So let's do that. Let's get y by itself. I'm going to start by subtracting 3x and subtracting 3x. And when I subtract 3x, my new equation is going to be a negative y equals, and I'm going to rewrite 5 minus 3x, but I'm going to write it as negative 3x with a positive 5. That way it starts looking like slope-intercept form, but it's still not in slope-intercept form because I have a minus sign right here, and I need to get rid of that minus sign. So I need to multiply everything by negative 1 or divide everything by negative 1. But the bottom line is I'm going to change all the signs, and it'll become y equals positive 3x with a minus 5. Changing all the signs. So there's my slope-intercept form equation of this original standard form equation, okay? So why the heck did I change the original standard form to slope-intercept? I did that just so I could identify the slope of this line. What is the slope of this line? 3, y equals mx plus b. So 3 is my slope. How do I know that my slope is 3? Because the instructions say that my line is parallel to this line. And if it's parallel, that means it has the same slope. Are you with me? So I don't have to look at this work again. I don't have to look at this equation again. I don't even care about this. Whoops, I started erasing it. I guess it doesn't matter because I don't care about that equation anymore. I already got out what I needed, that my slope is 3, the parallel slope of that one, okay? So what do I have now? I have a slope and I have a point, right? And that point is technically an x value and a y value, and you could label it 1, 1 if you want. So if you do have a point and a slope, you could choose to write your equation in point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. And when I use this and when you use this, I recommend you write it with blank spots. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Notice that I left it blank. Why? Because I'm going to take the y1 value of negative 2 up here, and I'm going to plug it into that y1 spot. So I'm going to put a negative 2 right in there. And then I'm going to take the x1 value of negative 1 and plug that in over here where the x1 is at. I'm going to plug in a negative 1 right there. And then I'm going to take the m value, the m value of 3. How did I get the m value of 3? Because I changed this to slope-intercept form. I found out that that equation had the slope 3. And if it's parallel to mine, that means that my equation has a slope 3. So I'm going to put that slope 3 right here. And now we have an equation in point slope form. The only thing you could do to make it look nicer is to change the minus minus to plus plus. Okay. So if they would have said, write your equation in point slope form, I would be done right here. Y plus 2 equals 3 parentheses x plus 1. But they don't want it in point slope form. The instructions say slope intercept form. Slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. I don't have parentheses, and I have y by itself. So I don't want these parentheses, and I don't want the plus 2. I want y by itself. So we're going to get rid of the parentheses first. How? By distributing the 3. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 1 is 3. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y and the plus 2. Here's our new blue equation without the parentheses. And now all we have to do is get rid of that plus 2 by subtracting 2 and subtracting 2. And we will have our final slope-intercept form equation right here. Y equals, the slope is 3 with an x, and then plus 1. So here's my slope-intercept form equation. That's the answer right there. This equation, if I were to graph it, I would put a dot at 1 on the y-axis. I would rise 3, run 1, and I would extend it in both directions, and it would ultimately pass through the given point, and it would be parallel to this equation up here if I were to graph the other equation. So that is a lot of work, but it's doable, especially the more you practice, the easier it gets. Now, let's say you didn't like point slope form. Let's say you read the instructions and said, okay, I have this point and I could change this to find my slope. Okay, I got my slope and I have a point, but I don't like point slope form. But I mean, as personally, I prefer to use point slope. I prefer to use point slope form. But let's say you didn't like point slope form and you just wanted to stick with y equals mx plus b, then you could just plug in the information that you have right now to find that missing b value. You see, in order to write an equation of y equals mx plus b, you need both an m and a b. You need both the m and a b. So far, we have the m, but we still need the b. If you don't have that b, you're not going to be able to write it. So what we're going to do is plug in everything to find out that b value. You see, y, instead of y, I could take this y value and plug it right in, right there. Check it out. This negative 2, that's a y. I'm going to put it right there. And it's going to be a negative 2 right there instead of the y. And then the m, instead of m, I could plug in 3 because I already know that m equals 3. So I'm going to take this 3 and put it right here. Now keep in mind that this says m times x. It's not m plus x. It's m times x. So I need to multiply, and I might as well use parentheses, by the x value, but we're going to use the x value of the coordinate and plug it right in there. The x value of the coordinate is negative 1. I'm going to put it right in there. And then we still have the plus b, which I don't know b, so I can't plug in anything for b. I'm just going to put plus b right there. Plus b. So what I have now is numbers, operations. It's an equation with a single variable, and we could solve for single variable equations. I could get b by itself on one side. Let's actually do that. Let's begin by simplifying the equation. 3 times negative 1, that's negative 3. You still have a plus b. You still have an equal sign. You still have a negative 2. And now you want to get b by itself. All you have to do is get rid of that minus 3. How do I do that? Plus 3. Plus 3. What I do to one side, I do to the other. I end up with b equaling 1. Or you could write it b equals 1. Now that you know that your b equals 1, you have an m, you have a b. Now you could just plug in the 3 right there, the b right there, and you're done. Your equation will be y equals mx plus b. There's your equation, y equals 3x plus 1. You see, it's the same exact equation as over here. It's just done completely differently, okay? I mean, if you look at this whole thing, you're like, man, that's a lot of work. Okay, I explained it 2 times, right? I did it 2 different ways. You don't have to do it 2 different ways. You could pick one or the other. If you get to the point where you find the slope and you have a point, I like it. When I have the slope and a point, I go straight to point slope form. I like point slope form. And I just plug in my slope right there. I plug in my point right there, x1, y1. And then I figure it out. Then I change it from point slope to slope intercept. But if you don't want to go this route, you could go this route over here. Y equals mx plus b. The y goes there, the x goes there, the m goes there, and you solve for b And then once you have an m and a b, you could just plug in the m, plug in the b, and you have your slope-intercept form equation. It's totally up to you. There is no better way of doing it. They're both equally fine. It just depends on what you feel more comfortable with, right? So for the sake of explaining everything thoroughly, I'm going to explain both methods each time, which is going to make the homework twice as long, right? Or the explanations twice as long. But just keep in mind, you pick one or the other. You don't have to do both, okay? Let's do one more of these on this front side of the worksheet that deals with parallel lines. I'm going to go for number 11. Once again, our line is parallel to this line, which means it has the same slope of this line. But if I ask you, what is the slope of this line? You're like, I don't know. I don't know either, because this is in standard form, ax plus by equals c. I need an m value, which means I have to rewrite it in y equals mx plus b form, okay? So how do I start rewriting this in y equals mx plus b form? What do I do to this equation to get the y by itself? Minus 4x, that's the first thing to do. What you do to one side, you do to the other side, minus 4x. We're going to rewrite this thing. That's going to be a 3y equals, bring the minus 4x first, and then the positive 1 second. And then at the very end, I'm going to do what to get y by itself? Anybody awake? Divide by 3. Thank you so much. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. Divide everything by 3. Now, this is an ugly slope-intercept form equation. The slope-intercept form equation is y equals, the slope is negative 4 over 3 with an x plus 1 over 3. And that 1 over 3 is technically our b value. If I were graphing, I would not be happy right now because I would have to do a y-intercept at 1/3. But I'm not graphing it. The only thing I really need from this equation is what? My slope, right? Remember, this equation on the instructions said that our equation will be parallel to this equation. So parallel means same slope. So the only thing that I care about on this equation is that I identify what this m value is that I just highlighted in blue right there. That m value is negative 4/3. And if my line is parallel to that line, that means that my line is going to have the same identical slope, negative 4/3. Now, they do want us to write an equation in y equals mx plus b form. That's what they want us to write. I have an m so far, which I could plug in right there, but I don't have a b. I need a b in order to write y equals mx plus b. I need the m and the b to be able to write it in y equals mx plus b. And so far, I don't know that. What do I know so far? I have a point, which is technically an x1, y1. And I also have a slope, which I found by changing this to slope-intercept form and understanding that parallel means the same slope. So my slope is the same as that one. So because I have a point and a slope, me personally, as a teacher, I personally like to use point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. And when I use this form, and when you use this form, I recommend rewriting it with blank spots. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. That way you could easily plug in your y1 value, which is 6, plug it in right there, a 6 right there. And then the m value of negative 4/3, plug it in right there where the m's at. Negative 4/3. Whoops, let me do that in red and blue to stay color coordinated. Negative 4/3. And then the x1 value is negative 5. Plug that in right there, negative 5. Of course, the minus minus changes to plus plus. And this is in point slope form, but they want it in slope intercept form. Okay, slope intercept form. So slope intercept form is where you have y by itself and for sure no parentheses like I do right here. So one option is to distribute the 4/3 to get rid of the parenthesis. Okay. The other option is to get rid of the fraction, then distribute the negative 4, and then get y by itself. But I don't know. The question is, do we want to distribute the fraction or get rid of the fraction, which is a little bit more work to get rid of the fraction? I want to distribute the fraction on this one. All right. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm doing. Please stop me if you don't. Negative 4/3 times x is exactly that, negative 4/3 x. Negative 4/3 times a positive 5. Go ahead and put that 5 over a 1. And we know that a negative times a positive is a negative. And up on top, 4 times 5 is 20. And on the bottom, 3 times 1 is 3. Yeah, this is ugly. And then we have the equals, the minus 6, and the y. At any point, if you're confused with fractions, you could get rid of fractions by multiplying everything by the denominator of the fraction you want to get rid of. So, I mean, right here, if this is looking really ugly to you, you could get rid of those fractions by multiplying everything by 3. This times 3, this times 3, this times 3, which will cancel out, this times 3, which will cancel out. So you're going to have a new equation that reads 3y minus 18 equals negative 4x minus 20. And we almost have it in slope-intercept form. We just need to do two things. I'm going to add 18. When we do to one side, do to the other, add 18. You're going to have 3y, bring down the equal sign, negative 4x minus 2. And for your final step, you got to get rid of that multiplication of 3 in front of the y. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. And there's your slope-intercept form equation. Y equals negative 4/3 x minus 2/3. This would be an ugly equation to graph, but that is my slope-intercept form equation. That was ugly. One of the more challenging questions on this worksheet. Now, let's say you didn't want to mess with point-slope form, then you could have stuck with y equals mx plus b. Maybe it'll be a little bit nicer in this case. So let's say you wanted to stick with y equals mx plus b. After finding your slope by changing this to slope-intercept form and identifying that m value and knowing that parallel means the same slope, then that means that you have the same slope. Once you find that slope, then you could just plug in the slope right here, plug in the y right here, plug in your x right there, and have an equation that you could solve for b. And once you have the m and the b, you'll be able to write it in y equals mx plus b form. So here's an alternative way. Okay, so if you understood that first way, that's great. If you want to just try sticking with slope-intercept form, here we go. We're going to plug in the slope, negative 4/3. We're going to plug it in right there. So negative 4/3. Now keep in mind that it says m times x. So there's really a multiplication sign. So I'm going to put a multiplication sign, and I'm going to put the x in parentheses. And this x happens to be negative 5. So we put a negative 5 right in there. And then we have the equal sign over here. And on the left side, we have a y. So I'm going to plug in the y value of 6 right there. So there's going to be a 6 right there. And of course, we still have the plus b right there. So I'm going to write that plus b. So we have an equation that is solvable for b. It's really easy to multiply fractions with numbers. All you have to do is put that number over a 1. And then you multiply the top with the top. So what is negative 4 times negative 5? That is positive 20. And 3 times 1 is 3. So 20 over 3, equal sign, plus b, with a 6 on the left side. Now, all we have to do is subtract 20/3 and subtract 20/3, and you'll have your b value. But you might be confused because you don't want to subtract the fraction 20/3 from the number 6. You could go ahead and temporarily get rid of the fraction if you wanted to by multiplying everything by the denominator 3. So times 3 will cancel it out. Times 3 times 3. So you have an 18 equals 20 plus 3b. No more fractions for a little while. The fraction will come back in a little bit. Let's get b by itself. You're going to subtract 20. Subtract 20. That'll give you a negative 2 equals 3b, which means that you almost have b by itself. You just need to get rid of that multiplication of 3 in front of b. So how do you get rid of multiplication? With division. Divide by 3, cancels out. b equals negative 2/3. So we know b equals negative 2/3. So now that we know m and we know b, we could plug it into slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx, negative 4/3 x, plus b, which is a minus 2/3. So there's your slope-intercept form equation. Y equals negative 4/3 x minus 2/3. Same as over here, y equals negative 4/3 x minus 2/3. We did it two different ways. In both different ways, you had to deal with fractions, so we got rid of them by multiplying everything by the denominator of the fraction. It probably would have been a little bit easier if we would have, at the point slope form situation, if we would have gotten rid of this fraction right here by multiplying y times 3, 6 times 3, and this fraction times 3, that way you would just distribute a negative 4 times x and a negative 4 times 5. I think that would have been a little bit nicer, but we got it done in two different ways, all right? So the whole front page has the instructions that they give you a point, and also your line is parallel, same slope as the equation that they give you. Let's flip the paper over. On the back side, it says write an equation, and again, they give you a point, but this time they tell you that your slope will be perpendicular to the given slope, which means opposite reciprocal. Man, sorry, messed up. Opposite reciprocal. What does that mean? That the sign changes, change sign, and flip fraction. So they give you a point and they give you an equation, and you need to identify the slope of that equation and then change the sign and flip it so you could get your slope, and then you could find your equation with the given point and the slope that you just found. So with that said, I want to go over a couple of these. Let's start with, let's go for the hardest one. Let's go for 23. Okay. So they want us to write a slope-intercept form equation. We need a M and we need a B. I don't know either of them. What do I know? I know a point, x1, y1. I don't even have a slope yet. What they tell us is that our line is perpendicular to the slope of this line. The thing is, I can't see the slope yet. So what do I need to do to get the slope out of there? I need to change it to slope-intercept form, y by itself. I need y equals mx plus b. So I am going to subtract 4x to start getting the y by itself. And what I do to one side, I do to the other, subtract 4x. I want to rewrite this equation, 3y equals negative 4x minus 6. I need to get rid of that multiplication of 3 in front of the y by dividing by 3, dividing by 3, dividing by 3. This will be y equals, my slope is negative 4/3 in front of the x. And then we have a minus 2 over here. But in reality, the only thing I need from this equation is to identify its slope. That way I could acquire my slope from that slope, knowing that they're perpendicular, okay? So this slope is negative 4/3, which means that my slope is gonna be what? The opposite reciprocal of that slope. So what's my slope gonna be? What's the opposite of a negative? Positive. And what's the reciprocal of 4/3? 3/4, okay? So again, opposite reciprocal, change the sign, whoops. Change this to a positive and flip the fraction to a 3/4. So our slope is a positive 3/4, only because on this second half of the worksheet, it says perpendicular lines are given to you. So that would mean that that slope is the opposite reciprocal of the one that we need, okay? So now we have a slope and we have a point. I would jump to point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I would rewrite it with blank spots. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Okay, so instead of y1, I'm actually going to plug in the y1 value of negative 5 right there. And instead of x1, the negative 6, I want to take that negative 6 and put it right there where the x1 is supposed to be at. That's really a negative 6. And of course, the m value, after doing all this work, we found that it's the opposite reciprocal of this guy, which means our slope is 3/4. So I'm going to take this 3/4, plug it right there. It's a 3/4. And that is my point slope form equation. All I have to do now is change the minus to plus plus. And if they asked us for an equation in point slope form, this would be it right here. Y plus 5 equals 3/4 times x plus 6. Okay, that would be it. But they say write the equation in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, which means that it doesn't have parentheses and it has y by itself. So let's get rid of the parentheses first by distributing the number. Now, because I have a fraction, I don't want to deal with fractions. It'll be a lot easier to get rid of the fractions. So what could we multiply everything by to get rid of the 3/4? 4, right? So we're going to multiply everything by 4. So we're going to put times 4, times 4, times 4, multiply everything by 4, and you'll no longer have a fraction because it'll cancel out. Now, I know you're thinking, wait a minute, didn't you just say multiply everything by 4? Why didn't you multiply the x and the 6 by 4? I kind of actually did, because whatever I do to this outside guy, it's like doing it to the inside guys because of the distributed property that's going to happen right now, okay? So once again, whatever I do to this outside value that I need to distribute, it's like if I did it to the inside values. So do not multiply the x by 4 and the 6 by 4. You don't mess with them because you already multiplied that outside value by 4, which canceled out. So here's my new equation without fractions. 4y plus 20 equals 3 parentheses x plus 6. All we need to do now is distribute 3 times x, 3x, 3 times 6, 18. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the 4y and the plus 20. So we almost have y by itself. All I have to do is get rid of the 20 by subtracting 20 and subtracting 20. We're going to have 4y equals 3x minus 2. And then at this point, the final step would be to divide everything by 4. So we're going to divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. And we will get y equals 3/4 x minus 2/4, or you could actually reduce that to 1/2. And that would be your answer. I'm not sure if the answers actually reduce the b value to 1/2. I definitely would, especially if I were graphing. It would cross between 0 and -1, perfectly halfway between on the y-axis. You would rise 3 and run 4 from that point. Anyways, that's the answer. And that was using point-slope form. After we acquired our slope and we had a point, we plugged in the point and we plugged in the slope to get it into point-slope form, and then we changed it to slope-intercept. Now you could have, if you wanted to, if you didn't want to go with the point-slope form situation, you could have said, I'm just going to stick with y equals mx plus b. So you could have just plugged in the y value of -5 right there where the y is at. You could have brought down the equal sign, plugged in the m value, the m value that we acquired 3/4 right there where the m is at, and then multiply it by x, and the x value happens to be -6. And you could put the plus b. You can't really, there is no value to plug in for a b, so just rewrite plus b down here. And what we have is an equation that is solvable for b. So you want to get b by itself, do the math. How could you multiply fractions? It's really easy. Just multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom after putting that 6 over a 1. So you're going to end up with 3 times -6, that's -18, over 4 times 1, that's 4, with an equal sign right here, with the -5 over here, with the plus b over here. Now, yes, this fraction is reducible. You could reduce it to -9/2 if you want, or you could multiply everything by 4 if you want. It's totally up to you. I'm just going to get rid of the fraction by multiplying everything by 4. That times 4, this times 4, the b times 4. That will give us a -20 equals, the 4's cancel out, -18 plus 4b. Final 2 steps would be to get b by itself on the right side of the equal sign by getting rid of that -18, by adding 18 and adding 18, giving us a -2 equaling b, actually 4b, which means that you want to get rid of that multiplication of 4 in front of the b. You're going to divide by 4 and divide by 4, giving you -1/2 on this side, equaling b on that side. And now that we know that our b value is -1/2, we could write our equation of y equals mx plus b. So the answer is y equals mx plus b. Y equals 3/4 x minus 1/2. Y equals 3/4 x minus 1/2. It's just done 2 separate ways, totally different. One is just sticking with slope-intercept form. The other is understanding that once you have a point and a slope, go for point-slope form and then changing it to slope-intercept. It's totally up to you what you're more comfortable with. Now, I do want to go over one more question. I know it's a really long lesson. I apologize, or long video. But I really like number 16. I just saw it right now. And the reason why I like it is because, well, you'll see right now. Let's do it. the first thing to do is to take this equation and find the slope from it so we could get an opposite reciprocal slope because our line is perpendicular to this line. So I want to get y by itself. Let's start by subtracting x, canceling out, subtracting x. You're going to rewrite this thing. It's going to be a 5y equals negative 1x plus 15. You don't have to put the 1. You could just put negative x. Final step would be to divide by 5, divide by 5, divide by 5. The reason why I put the 1 there is because your slope is going to end up being negative 1/5 right there. So here it is. Y equals, the slope is negative 1/5 x plus 3. Plus 3 because 15 divided by 5 is 3. So what I did here is I took the standard form equation that they gave us and I changed it to slope-intercept form. Why? So I could identify the m value of negative 1/5. Now, the instructions say that our line is perpendicular to this line. And what does perpendicular mean? That they have opposite reciprocal slopes. So what is the slope of my line? What is my m value? 5/1, or just 5. I mean, 5/1 is fine. Just 5 is a little bit easier to work with. So we know our m, and we need our b, right? So what do we have here? We have a point, x1, y1, and I have a slope. So my natural reaction to seeing a point and a slope is to go for point-slope form, right? And you would plug in your 0 right there, your 1 right there, your m right there, and then you would distribute the slope of 5, and you get y by itself, and it'll be in slope-intercept form. But that's my natural reaction. That's what I would do naturally. But if I just recognize that this coordinate, what is this coordinate really? Where's the location 0, 1 at? If you think about an xy plane. 0 on the x, 1 on the y. This is technically a y-intercept value. So this is technically our b value. Does that make sense? The location 0, 1 is right there. That coordinate 0, 1. So if my line passes through there, that's technically the y-intercept of the line that I want, which is technically the b value, which means that the b value is 1. And if I know the m and I know the b, then it's kind of worthless or pointless to go through all this work. I mean, we could if you're bored, right? But you already know the m, you already know the b, you could just write it out. Y equals 5x plus 1. There's your answer. Y equals 5x plus 1. Pretty cool, huh? That's just recognizing, and this is a rare situation. That's why I picked 16. This doesn't happen a lot. But in this special case, they give you the point, which is not any regular point. This is actually where your line crosses the y-axis. It's on the y-axis, 0, 1. So indirectly, they are giving you the b value. The b value is 1. They indirectly gave you the m, perpendicular to this, and they indirectly gave you the b by telling you 0, 1. Now, if you didn't see that, then you probably would have gone through the motions of doing it in point-slope form, and you'd get to this anyway. And if you didn't see that this is the b value, you could have plugged in the y value of 1, the x value of 0, the m value of 5, and still had a plus b right here, and then solved it, and you'd be able to solve b equaling 1, and then you'd get back to here anyway. But it's always good to understand what you're seeing, and 0, 1 is not just a point, it's actually the y-intercept. Anyways, it's been long enough. I want you to work on this for the rest of class. If you need help on other questions, there will be other videos explaining the other questions. But right now in class, for sure, please ask me for help.